Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, Discover Botswana on a Family Safari, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Russell Gerber. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Russell, take it away.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks everyone for joining us once again on the Daily Dose of Nature. Great to be back again with you all, and again chatting about one of my favorite destinations, as I'm sure some of you, if you've watched these or one of mine in the past, Botswana. And in this case, chatting about our family safari trip to the Botswana area or region. We're going to go into a nice deep dive on that trip and what to expect on your safari. So thanks for joining us, and let's get cracking. So for those of you who haven't joined me before, my name's Russell Gerber. I have an undergraduate degree in zoology and African vertebrate biology, and did my postgraduate honors in marine biology. I've been a safari and marine field guide since 2004 and a NatHab expedition leader since 2018. So spent a lot of time in the field, a lot of time out there learning and educating myself, and really just enjoying myself in destinations really all over the world, which has been such a privilege. And these days, living out of Cape Town and spending most of my time guiding all over Africa for NatHab. Including East Africa, Botswana, Madagascar, South Africa, and pretty much all of our destinations across the continent. So that's just a little bit about myself for those of you who haven't joined us before. And hopefully, if we haven't met on a safari somewhere in Africa, hopefully we'll be meeting on one again or in the near future on a trip down to Africa. So just a little bit about myself before we dive in. So, as I always like to do in my webinars, I like to just go through quickly what the outline of the webinar will be. We'll go into just a little bit of where Botswana is, if you're not entirely sure. We will look at where we go on our trip in our NatHab Botswana family safari. We'll talk about the seasons, what times of year are what to expect at those different times of years, weather, wildlife, and we'll even go into your daily safari experiences, what we can do other than safari while we're out in the bush, and if you decide to go and you're keen or you've already booked a trip with us on this, we'll go into a little bit of packing and how to prepare for a trip out to Botswana or any safari really in Africa. So diving into the whole thing, of course, Botswana is in the southern part of Africa. You can see it highlighted here in dark green. It is a landlocked country, surrounded on all sides by the various other southern African countries. To the south, South Africa, to the west, Namibia, to the east, Zimbabwe, and just to the north, you'll see it just touching on Zambia as well. So landlocked and uniquely, mostly a desert country. But of course, the magical part of Botswana is, of course, the northern parts, home to the world famous World Heritage Site now, the Okavango Delta. So we're going to touch on a little bit of all of the destinations we visit on our family safari. But just quickly, you can see here in the map a quick overview of Botswana itself as we zoom in on it. You see in the northern part or the top parts of the map, the Okavango, Chobe National Park, along the Zambezi River, which is the northern border between Namibia and Angola, and Zambia, and then just below that, the Chobe River, which forms the border between Namibia and Botswana. So we'll touch a little bit on all of these areas and the main regions that we'll visit and what makes them such special wildlife hotspots that, of course, brings us there in the first place. So a lot of these pictures that you'll see today as well, folks, of course, are taken from the region and actually from this particular family trip. And so a lot of what you see will give you an idea or a feeling of what to expect on this particular safari. But the first part of our journey this evening was, of course, touching on when is the family safari season. So most of our trips for this particular departure tend to run in the winter months of Southern Africa. Well, when is that? Of course, roughly from June through to September. But our trips actually run all the way through into December, taking us into the summer months, which have its own magical advantages as well. I've actually done a webinar on Botswana in the green season, as it's known, and we'll touch on that in just a second. But in the winter, Botswana is a lot cooler than what a lot of people expect. In the middle of the day, you often will have very nice, warm, sometimes even hot temperatures, reaching the 80s, even into the mid 90s on a particularly hot day. But at other times, it can actually drop much cooler. So particularly at night, it can be much, much cooler, dropping sometimes even into the 60s. And particularly when you're out on game drive early in the morning or even in the evenings, but particularly those mornings, because of the desert nature of Botswana, it often feels like a really, really cold environment, and you need those extra layers to keep you warm. So definitely something that we'll talk about a little later on as well. The Northern Hemisphere summer vacation, of course, is really what brings so many of our visitors to this part of the world at that time of year. And it does make it the most popular time of year to visit on safari, this June through to September time. Many of the reasons for that, we've mentioned the summer vacations in the north, but also, of course, the little to no rainstorms or inclement weather. Most days are very clear skies and a very typical weather system of very warm in the morning, very cool in the morning, warm in the day, and then cool again in the evening. So it does, of course, have lots of advantages to do that. The green season, as we discussed, starts around the end of November, which of course starts to mean that things start getting drier, quite a lot hotter, and it can get very warm, even touching into 100 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit around that time of year. But again, in the evenings, it does cool down quite nicely to give you some relief from that heat. So the heat brings, of course, some storms, potentially some rain, starting around about November and December. And that then brings about the rainy season and often the change of the environment from that water arriving into the system. And we'll go into that in a little bit further detail as well. But the summer safari, winter safari, both of them have wonderful advantages, and we'll go into that in just a little while. So the start of our trip, where do we start? How does this trip actually get underway? And the beginning of it is, of course, in the Kalahari. We start in the Kalahari and the Machadachari salt pan, an area that is, of course, renowned for its dry and desert-adapted animals. But one thing that a lot of people don't know about is, of course, the huge amount of animals and general game that you actually get there at certain times of year. But looking at the map to give you a feeling for exactly where this is all happening, if you look here under that little red dot, you'll see that is where the first part of our trip will take place in the Machadachari Salt Pans National Park, just to the southeast of Maun, which is really the gateway into the Okavango. So I said to you that there is actually an amazing amount of general game that occurs in this region at certain times of the year. And one of the reasons for that is what is known as the migration. It's not the famous migration that we all have heard of in East Africa, but almost as biodense and almost as many species that will actually be moving in these big circles is, of course, dominated by the zebra and wildebeest, but mostly in this particular case, zebra. And while we've known about these movements for a long time, most of what the numbers were and how predictable these movements were wasn't really studied until more recently. So it's often referred to as uh, the unheard of and the secret migration that of the um, many of the people would have heard of around the world. I see we're having some technical issues here, so I'm just going to have a look and see if we can solve that for you. If everything's okay on your side. Rob, everything cool? Let me know if I should plow ahead or not. In the meantime, I'm going to keep going, Rob, until you let me know to stop. But so that migration is certainly one of the highlights, and often in our first destination at Meno Equena, our first camp, and I'll tell you more about the camps as we get there. You will often get a lot of zebra in that area, wildebeest, impala, and sometimes even things like gemsbok, and of course even on occasion lions, leopard, and even elephants at certain times of year as well. Because of the movement of these animals, of course, there is a huge abundance of food available for potential predators. And so the viewing of big game and big predators in the area is also very prevalent. And one of the things that is so attractive of the Kalahari is, of course, the big black-maned lions. But all of this is driven by the fact that the Kalahari actually holds water pretty well and is far more productive than a lot of people actually realize in terms of the grazing and food availability for all of these herbivorous species that arrive in the area. Mostly, they tend to hang around and congregate around about December, November, December. We first start seeing the big herds arrive. So that is when you see the most, but they're just about all year in decent numbers as well. Though not migratory, there are a number of very special and iconic species that you can enjoy in the Kalahari. And one of the most well-known and sought-after attractions is the habituated meerkat experience. Now, what is this? This is the opportunity for you to actually get out on foot and go to some of these little meerkat colonies and spend some time with these habituated meerkats. They're not tame, they're totally wild, but we have had the privilege of hanging out with these little animals that have been habituated with local people and rangers who spend their entire day with these colonies and basically get them used to our presence. And because of that, we can watch them at their completely natural behaviors and enjoy them for up to an hour, sometimes more, depending on whether or not they are cooperative. But you can get really up close and personal, even to the point of hearing their little calls to one another and enjoying that as a full experience. So a very different experience from what your usual safari would be in the game drive vehicle looking for big game. This is just such a wonderful way to get on foot and experience one of the most charismatic species of the Kalahari.
Russell, sorry,
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt. I had some technical difficulties and I dropped out for a moment. Your slideshow isn't moving.
Oh, it's not moving at all?
No, we are actually still on the first slide, unfortunately.
Oh my
I
goodness. Okay.
apologize.
Let me sort that out. I don't know how that's happened.
All right.
All right, so we are on to the Okavango. but I can quickly go back so that you guys can see what I was talking about. But I think we should be okay now, Rob. Is that better?
Absolutely, everything is moving smoothly now.
Okay. Well, sorry about that, folks, but we'll move ahead. You'll get the idea, and I'll plow ahead if that's good with you, Rob.
Absolutely, Russell. Let's power forward, sir.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we were just chatting about when the safari season is. As I said, mostly the winter months, June through December. It's cooler that time of year, as we spoke about, and there's a number of reasons for that. And with the green season starting November, and getting warmer as we head into November, December, and January. So that's really where we were talking about how or what makes the Kalahari such a special and popular place. Here I was showing you guys exactly where we were talking about, as you can see with the red circle there, and we touched on the zebra migration as well. So as I said, that migration moves around the northern parts of Botswana, up or down from the Chobe area that we saw on the map, all the way down through the Okavango and down to the Makgadikgadi salt pans, and to the edge of the pans where the grazing is really excellent for these zebra and wildebeest in the summer months. I then, as I said, mentioned to you guys about the meerkat. This is a lovely little meerkat that I took a picture of in one of our habituated meerkat experiences. And like I said, one of the most wonderful things to actually do in the Kalahari is this fabulous, unique experience with these little characters of the Kalahari. So hopefully that brings us up to date on where we are. And again, sorry about those little gremlins in the system. But heading into the Okavango, we move from the Kalahari, two camps in the Kalahari. And as I said to you guys, we'll talk a little bit about each of your camps that you'll stay in a little while. But from the desert areas of the southern parts of Botswana or central parts of Botswana, we head up to the north into the Okavango, and one of the most iconic wildlife areas in Africa. And here you can see that red dot once again. It's just come in on your screen, covering a portion of the Okavango itself. And many of you may have heard that term before, and thought, okay, well that's wonderful, but what is the Okavango? What's so special about it? And why do people talk about it as such a particular hotspot of safari in Africa? Well, the delta itself is technically not a delta. Its technical name should in fact be an alluvial fan, as the water runs in from the north into this huge alluvial fan into the desert, creating this extremely lush and ever-changing environment from rainfall that actually occurs over 2,000 miles away in the northern highlands of Angola. So all of that together creates this system where what is otherwise a desert system being inundated with water from around about June, which, as you would have remember from our earlier slides, is that is just about when our family safaris start into the region. So often we get spoiled with the arrivals of those first flood waters coming into the delta. Now, not to be misleading, the delta itself has permanent water in it as well, but over 70% of the water that actually arrives each year disappears into the air through evaporation. And so a huge amount of it is lost, some of course the rest through vegetation and the animals, but a lot of it lost through sheer evaporation, particularly as things start to get hotter around October, November, into December. But then remember, as we get into December, the rains start to come again. So it almost rejuvenates the system, and we get just a punch of life back into the delta as those floodwaters start to dry out from around October. So a unique system, like I said, ever changing with those floods arriving, but the water tends to arrive around about June and July. It's never exact, of course, because you never know how the rains are going to go up in the north, but it normally arrives around about June. This is obviously when most of our trips will travel, and often is the most popular time because of the reasons we spoke about, but that's not necessarily a reason not to come. One of the wonderful things about Botswana is that it is so remote and our camps are so remote, we almost never see other vehicles out on our game drives. It's very limited in terms of the number of lodges, vehicles, and reserves in the area. So because of that, you get this remarkable exclusivity in a lot of these massive, massive wildlife areas. Moving into the dry season in the Okavango, you can see the channels dry up. They go much more narrow, though often still very green. And if you get a particularly dry year, the rains come particularly late, then sometimes this picture you're looking at now can go very brown and very gray with just narrow channels of water left over. But when those rains arrive, as I said, it rejuvenates the whole system, and it often then, of course, brings on the birth of all the little babies that arrive each year. But we'll touch on that in a little while as well. As it starts to get dry in October, things start getting a little bit more difficult for your herbivores. And with that, the predators start to get the upper hand. So you have this ever-changing predator-prey cycle, and that around about October, November, you start to see much more interaction between these predators and prey. And as I said, things are very dry. The predators slowly start to gain that upper hand. There's less vegetation and cover for them animals to hide. And animals, of course, are congregated and concentrated towards these permanent bodies of water that we touched on. With that, you start to get more interactions, and often going that time of year, October, November, and December, is often the best time of year to see predation activity, and will give you your best chance at a good luck opportunity of actually seeing a hunt and a successful hunt taking place. So like I said, every time of year has its benefits, and just to illustrate the tough times that many herbivores will face, just a little picture of an ex-wildebeest that we found in the sand on one of our trips. As we head into December, the rainy season starts to come. So often at the end of November, you'll see a little bit of rain, but really December through to February is when you get most of our rainy experiences. But like I said, with the arrival of that rain, we often see the arrival of babies of species like impala, zebra, red lechwe, kudu, all often arriving at the same time. With that, giving the predators opportunity for increased hunting of those youngsters as well. So for a short time, as I said, there's this abundance of young prey available, and many prey species have now endured a reduction in condition from just those dry, lean months. And as we head further into the rainy season, where the grazing has been great, they start to put on weight, start to gain condition again, then it gets much harder for the predators to catch them. And so the cycle changes and it gets a little bit more difficult to be a predator through those months. So very different at different times of year. Another great benefit of coming in the summer months, of course, is the birds. We often get inundated with a number of migratory species arriving in the summer months, also from around about November onwards. And that, of course, is a huge attraction for those of you who are big birders out there. So how do we get around? How do we get out there? Most of our access into the camps is on small planes. So for those of you who haven't been on a small plane before, that is how we will get into the camps. We fly from Johannesburg into Maun, the gateway into the Okavango or into the Makgadikgadi salt pans. And from there, we then fly on small charter planes into the Delta, where we can't access by road. So most of it is by aeroplane, small planes, and then otherwise road transfers in 4x4 vehicles to get us into these wild natural areas. This is a picture taken of us on safari in the Makgadikgadi area. And on that note, let's dive into what you could expect on any given safari day. So as we head out into the wild, arriving in your first camp at Mokoena, most of our activities will start early in the morning. What time is that? Well, normally around 5 o'clock or 5:30 a.m. We'll get you guys a nice, gentle wake-up call, and knock on the door, and deliver you some coffee and tea in your bed, and then get you slowly out of bed to come and join us for our morning activity. We would then have a little snack, some hot drinks, hot cocoa or a tea, coffee, whatever you have in the morning, and a little snack, and then head out on our game drive. Out on the vehicle for about 4 hours or so, depending on what we see in the field. And out on the field, we'll have more coffee, snacks, and even some food that we'll bring along with us, just in case we get a little peckish while we're out in the field. After that, we come back to camp, generally have a nice hot brunch to fill us up. And for the most part, after an early morning start like that, most people will then go in for a little siesta to relax out the hottest part of the day. Often during that time with your EL, your expedition leader, we will sit down with you, go over some photographic tips, perhaps talk about a couple of things about the Okavango, what makes it special, about the Kalahari Desert and what makes it special. But often that time of day is for you to relax. We then meet again in the afternoons, normally about 3:30 or 4 o'clock for high tea. And in some camps, each of them are a little different. We also have lunch in between available if you do need it. You will notice on this day's activities that it often becomes very much an eating safari. But of course, you can have whatever you need whenever you want it, but you don't have to have every meal if you're not feeling like it. But there is always something available. We then will head out on our afternoon game drive, normally about half an hour, about 3.5 hours, depending again on what we see, and then back into camp just after sunset. Once we're back in camp, we'll often just settle in for dinner, and then after perhaps a little story time around the fire, head off to bed, have a shower, and do it all again the next day. So that is very much a typical day on safari, pretty much anywhere in Africa, but very much a Southern Africa system that we will utilize. So here you can see heading out on the vehicles in the Kwai Reserve, one of the stops that we will make on our family safari. And obviously traveling with the kids and being out on the vehicle with them, you're never sure how they're going to handle it, how comfortable they're going to be, are they going to get tired? And the wonderful thing about our family safari is that any time the kids start getting a little uptight, we can always head back to camp and have plenty of ideas and things we can do with them when we are in camp. But getting them out into the field and getting them excited about things like wild dog in this particular instance is always what this experience is all about. So as us on safari as well, we can see a very small little lion in the background there. But always something fun to experience with the kids as well. And they're always keen asking questions, and it is for most kids a very, very almost a life-changing experience for them. I've actually brought my kids on a number of safaris, and it really is something quite special. But safari is not the only thing to do while we're out there. There are many other activities. One that we will often look to do when we are in the Okavango region, the wetter part of our trip, we'll often try to do the mokoros, also known as traditional dugout canoes. As you can see, it's very much like a little gondola in Venice, but in this case, in the wild, shallow waters of the Okavango. Something quite magical about it, nothing quite as peaceful as it, as a little cruise on the water with the mokoro, and often the highlight of many people's safari. So definitely something to look forward to for the Okavango portion. Another one very popular with the kids is, of course, ATVs, heading out on the four-wheelers in the Machadachadi salt pans or adjacent to the pans in the Kalahari region in the first part of our trip. Very, very popular and often loads of fun. Other things to do in camp is, of course, many of our camps, or all of the camps that we stay, have wonderful views and often the opportunity to see animals coming down for a drink of water from the comfort of our lodge, in this case, the swimming pool at Meno Okwena. This is the Boteti River in front of us here, quite low in the water that particular year, but as you can see, elephants right in front of us, and always something exciting for the kids to check out. We often will do things in camp, like various cooking lessons. We'll often do, we can make little casts of animal tracks. We'll talk about spoor, we'll talk about animal dung, we'll talk about plants, trees, insects, all sorts of fun things, always with kids in mind to keep them entertained. So there's always really something on offer. Another major highlight for many of the groups that come through is, of course, our sand cultural experience, also at Meno Okwena, where we will actually walk with some of the local peoples, some of the most ancient tribes in Africa and in Southern Africa, where the kids will get to experience a totally unique and different culture, hailing back to 10,000 years ago, this particular group of people still operating in that same manner, and often for the kids, as I said, it really is a highlight, as well as for the adults, because it is so interesting and unique. And on that particular experience, the guys will take you through animal tracking, showing you how they track things, with the Khoi San tribes being renowned as some of the best animal trackers in the world. They'll go through the various signs of the bush and how they find things, from medicinal plants to water in the very dry regions. But it is absolutely magical experience, and one of the things that most people talk about once the trip is over. Our last stop of the trip in this particular case is, of course, the wonderful Victoria Falls, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and it is truly magnificent. This was actually a helicopter flight that we did over the falls, just about in full flow, and around about June and July, you often get these very, very high waters. As you move forward into November, December, the water drops down quite significantly, but there's always beautiful viewing of the falls on our trips, and yeah, just different levels of water throughout the year. On that particular part of the trip, we also get the opportunity for a sunset cruise, spending time on the wonderful Zambezi River that I touched on a little earlier, where we often see animals like hippo, crocodiles, and even, of course, wonderful bird species, occasionally elephants swimming in the river, buffalo sometimes by the edge of the river. I've even seen lion from a sunset cruise, so you just never know what you're going to get. But mostly it's just such a wonderful and peaceful way to wind out a magnificent safari. Like I said, crocodiles. This was actually taken from one of our sunset cruises. So this was a picture I took where we were almost too close to this crocodile to actually for me to get it with my zoom lens on the camera. But really wonderful, and again, a huge highlight with the children. So a lot of you will be wondering, well, that's all good and well. Let's talk about the camps that you keep talking about, Russell. So let's get into that. So what kind of accommodation are you looking at? How comfortable is it? How wild is it? And the truth is, these are very wild places. We are often in areas that are unfenced, and at each location, the camp managers and your expedition leader will take you through the safety briefing of each camp. But there is wonderful comfort and luxury and food always available in camp, and you will feel completely safe throughout your stay. This is, of course, both these two pictures are from Meno Okwena, our first stop on our trip. And as you can see, the accommodation itself, very much African tented style, with a lot of sort of throwback and Victorian style decor in a lot of the rooms. But as you can see, a wonderful view of the Batete River out of the rooms themselves, which each of the rooms having a shower and flush toilets and hot water, electricity, all the things that you could hope for the comfort of your holiday. From there, we move on to Camp Kalahari, very similar in style with the tented rooms, with a few more little extra luxury comforts. And you will never feel like you are being shortchanged in any way in your accommodations. And then moving from there into the Okavango Delta at Sable Alley, again, very, very comfortable tented style accommodation. And lastly, we stop in the Victoria Falls, which is at Ilala, a more typical larger hotel with lots of comforts and still feeling like you are in the African bush. This picture, by the way, is just of Sable Alley, our accommodation in the Okavango itself. One of my favorite camps on the itinerary, and you can see why. The location is just second to none. The animals, wildlife in the area are just unbelievable. And yeah, I have no doubt you will love your time at all of the camps, but Sable Alley is definitely my favorite of the trip. Quickly, I wanted to touch on packing, what to bring along for yourself or for the kids. Obviously, soft-sided bags is the way to go. In this particular case, the Patagonia bag. We need to have those soft-sided bags so that you can pack them comfortably into the small planes that we spoke about. Your trip specialist will tell you all about the dimensions and weight that you're allowed to bring along. But this is definitely the kind of bag that I would recommend for you. Packing cubes and a good backpack are an essential addition to any good safari. Packing cubes just make things so much easier for you on your trip. And a good backpack to bring out on our game drives with your camera gear, your sunscreen and hat and jacket and all those good things, which we'll touch on in a minute. A good backpack is an essential item on the trip. Waterproof bags, often very useful, particularly if you're coming in the summer months when we might get some rain. And then a universal adapter that you can get just about anywhere online with some great attachments, always very useful in camp to help you in the rooms, although most of our camps do actually have adapters already, but it's never a bad idea to travel with one of these on any particular trip, particularly on safari in Africa. Good, comfortable walking shoes, and if you do need walking poles, do bring them along. If you don't walk with walking poles normally, then I wouldn't bring them. But good, comfortable shoes, even potentially waterproof shoes, are very, very useful, particularly in our Mkgadagadi, Kalahari portion of the trip, where we do go on walks with the meerkats, with the San and Bushman tribes. The vegetation there is often quite spiky, so good solid walking or hiking shoes definitely recommended for that portion of the trip. And like I said, you have this unique thing about Botswana that you get very hot days, but it's often very cool or even cold in the mornings and at night. So a light shirt that you can roll up or roll the sleeves up or down, and then a good light or easy to pack jacket that is very warm, like this Patagonia puffer jacket. Definitely something that I would recommend. This is actually exactly the gear that I take whenever I go on a winter safari into Botswana. Even a beanie and some good gloves, great to have along on a cold morning on a Botswana safari. So just because it's Africa, don't forget it still gets plenty cold here. However, like I said, in the day, it does get hot. A good hat, sunscreen, and a buff, really good to help protect you from the sun. But bringing along a buff, another great little tip is the dust. During the drier months in Botswana, it can often get dusty and sandy, so having a good buff along with you to cover up your face in those instances is really, really handy and something I would recommend for sure. A little flashlight to bring along, always useful, or a good headlamp, really nice to have along, particularly for the kiddos. And for the kids, when we're in camp and around the fire, it's often quite fun for them to do some exploring, not too far away, of course, within the bounds of the camp itself, but under supervision to go out with your headlamp and look for any critters is always something quite fun, and definitely something I'd recommend to bring along as well. Another one very important to bring is a good pair of binoculars, something that you can afford, always good. There's a couple of really good brands out there and some really affordable ones, whatever works for you, but having a pair of binoculars is a lot more useful than a lot of people actually realize. And then a good camera, again, the best kind of camera is the camera you got, your phone, iPad, or if you are more into your photography, bringing along a good DSLR or mirrorless camera with a good zoom lens is very, very useful. And of course, your bigger zoom lenses on a trip like this one, anything from a 400 millimeter lens to an 800 millimeter lens is going to get you really, really great shots. But whatever you have is always good. We've got a number of really good webinars on what to bring along on a Botswana safari. Court did one quite recently as well, Court Whelan. So do check that one out as well if you want to get some more detail on what to bring along in your camera bag. And that's about it from myself. Again, sorry about the technical issues that we had for a little while there, but hopefully we managed to clear that all up, and for all of you, you managed to get some information on this particular trip that you might find helpful. But as always, I open it up to you guys to some questions. So whenever you're ready, Rob, fire away.
All right. Thank you, Russell. Now, before we dive into the question and answer portion of the show, I would like to remind everyone if you do have questions, you can submit them via the question field in your control panel. Just go to the upper right-hand corner. You'll see those three lines. Click on those three lines and go down to questions and put your questions in there, and we will do our best to get them answered. All right, so let's dive into the questions. So we know this is a family safari. What do you suggest for an age range should be from youngest to oldest, anywhere in between?
It's a very good question. I would always recommend that from around 8 years old is kind of a minimum age for safari. Obviously, kids are all different. Some grow up a little faster. Some feel like or you may feel like would appreciate the experience much more at a younger age. Some are slightly older, but most safaris tend to go from around the 8-year-old range. 12-year-old is another typical kind of age range. But I would say anywhere from 8 years onward is a great age to go on safari. Having said that, I am a safari guide and an expedition leader. I have young kids. My daughter is 7, and my son is 4. And between the two of them, we've been on many safaris already, and they just love it. Within reason, you have to be clever on how you approach your days and perhaps not spending as much time out in the field as I might like. But doing those things, those activities we spoke about in between game drives, swimming in the pool, talking about the animals from areas of comfort, all of those things work really well to keep them entertained. So it's totally, from my point of view, up to you. You'll know your family and your kids, but generally speaking, from around about 8 years old tends to be when most kids tend to get the most out of their safari.
And how physically challenging is the trip? Do I need to be in great shape? Are the kids going to get too tired out?
Great question. No, it's really an easy to moderate trip. I think it's even listed as that on the website. Most of your game drives, you're in the vehicle sitting and being driven around. That the walk that we do, that cultural walk, is an hour. A very gentle and easy pace, and we generally do it early in the morning, so you don't get too hot. And for the most part, from a physical point of view, it really is quite an easy trip. The only thing really to consider is if you have back problems, obviously in the game drive vehicles, bouncing around, that can be something that makes it difficult for some people. If you do have mobility issues, getting in and out of the vehicle is often the trickiest part, but we will always be there to help you in and out of the vehicle. Um, and other than that, it's really, from a physical standpoint, a pretty easy trip to do.
Great, thank you. So, is there a way you could walk us through maybe a typical day on safari? I know every day is a little bit different, but in general.
Yeah, so pretty much kicking off at, as I said, around 5:30 in the morning. We would give you a gentle wake up call. From there, head through to the main area where we will give you a coffee, tea, a little snack, and something to eat before we head out on game drive. Game drive then would be around about 3, 4 hours, depending on what we see. Sometimes more if we're watching lions hunting or something super exciting like that. And then from there, back into camp, we often will have brunch, a nice hot brunch waiting for us. And then from there, some time to relax. Or if you want to go have a nap, that's also often the time where we as expedition leaders will sit with whoever wants to come through. We'll talk about photography, we'll talk about some of the areas that we're visiting. And from there, uh, we will generally have high tea around 3:30 or 4 o'clock, where we'll feed you again, and then from there head out on safari for the afternoon, generally back just after sunset. Um, and that's a very typical day. After that, we have some dinner in camp, and then head off to bed after some story time around the fire. And that is a very typical safari day, and generally works well for the kids as well. So yeah, nice and easy.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. Thank you for walking us through that.
Hmm.
Um, so, is there a drier time where it's a little drier and dustier there, or is it pretty consistent as far as wetness goes?
I would say pretty much from October, it starts to get quite dry and dusty. That tends to be where you start seeing more dust. Bearing in mind that for a lot of the time, with Botswana being a desert region and a lot of very sandy soil, you will often have dust around. Um, and so you need to be aware of that. Like I said, bringing along a buff to protect you from that dust, and keeping your camera gear covered while we're out on drive. All of those things really help to avoid the dust. But once you get to October or November, it tends to be at its dustiest just before the rainy season starts, normally towards the end of November into December. Once those rains start to come, it again, evens things out, and then it's not quite as dusty. But yeah, Botswana, because of its desert nature, because of the soil itself, and the very fine, silty kind of soil, it can be quite dusty, particularly, as I said, October and November.
Are mosquitoes something that we need to worry about? Malaria meds? Should we have something for that as well?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, good point. I just happened to miss that in my chat this evening, but yes, these are malaria areas, mostly low risk as we head up into Victoria Falls. That is a higher risk area. But as always with this stuff, chat to your doctor, your travel doctor, about the region and the risks involved. But we do recommend, taking the advice of any of your doctors of what medication you can take. Most people would then take anti-malarial prophylactics that will help them to avoid any particular issues. While we're out on safari, we will always have bug spray available to spray on your skin or clothes to help avoid getting any bites. We often recommend wearing longer sleeves in the evenings, long pants in the evenings, just to keep those bugs away. Um, and other than that, we don't see a lot of mosquitoes in these regions, but without question, they are around, and it is something you have to be aware of.
Great, thank you for that. So, how long are we going to be spending in each camp?
So, generally speaking, we would do 2 or 3 nights in each of the camps. So, uh, it depends on what particular trip you're doing, but most of the time it's 2 or 3 nights, which gives you plenty of time to enjoy all of the facilities have to offer, and really immerse yourself in each particular stop. Having said that, packing cubes and having your stuff really organized so that it's nice and easy for you to unpack along the way, um, and not having to, pack an entire bag every time you stop at a new location, it does make things much easier. And it's something that myself and many of the other expedition leaders will do, just to make our lives that little bit easier. But it gives you plenty of time in each of the camps, and will give you the opportunity to really immerse yourself in all of these different environments.
So, given the weight limits involved in our luggage travel, will we be able to do laundry at the camps while we're there?
Yes, thank you. Another good one. Yes, you can do laundry in camps. That takes a lot of stress off of the packing. Bearing in mind also, folks, that these are very casual areas. Most of us will be in comfortable, casual safari gear for dinner, for out on drive. Because we are in the wilds of Africa, there's no need to get all dressed up for dinner. So it does make things a little easier in terms of how much you need to pack, on your safari. Because we can wash stuff along the way, it makes it even easier. So yes, you can get laundry done throughout the trip.
So, in each camp, in our tent cabin combo thing, will there be a bathroom in each one? And I'll be able to shower right in my tent?
Yes, you can. And that's again, something that a lot of people are worried about. But if you remember looking at our accommodation at each of our spots, we spoke that each spot does in fact have shower and running water and a flush toilet and all the things that you would hope for, the general comforts of any trip that you would do around the world. So there certainly are these things available, so you don't have to worry about that at all. It is something that, from my point of view, my mom is always asking about showers and bathrooms. So I know that it's very important. And on this particular case, we have them all the way through.
Great, great to know. Let's talk about currency for a second. Are US dollars going to be okay, or should we have local currency? Would that be helpful?
For the most part, you can get away with, excuse me, with US dollars, no problem. Most of our guests do just bring US dollars. You can get local currency in Maun when we arrive if you'd like to have that. But for the most part, you won't need it. In the camps where there are small gift shops, you can actually use credit card in all instances, and you don't even need to have any form of cash in most cases. But I do recommend to most people to bring some cash along. US dollars is totally fine in the case of Botswana, particularly the camps that we're visiting. So unless you want to get some Botswanan pula to take home as a souvenir, you really don't need it throughout the trip.
Great, thank you so much. So, which part of Victoria Falls do we visit on this trip?
We're in Zimbabwe, so there are, of course, two sides to Victoria Falls, if you remember our picture of it. But let's see if I can go back quick. Vic Falls. But we are on the Zimbabwean side, um, which is in this particular picture, the bottom part of the picture. You'll see there's that road over there, and then just to the bottom right, you'll see the bridge. That bridge is the road that joins Zambia and Zimbabwe. So we will be on the left-hand side in Victoria Falls town itself, which is unique in that it's actually a town within a national park. So every now and again, you'll actually even get elephants, wild dogs, sometimes lions that come into the town at night. So it's a very wild place, and the people there are just, that's how they live and what they're comfortable with. Um, so we recommend not to do any window shopping in town at night, but hanging out in the day, it really is a wonderful place. But like I mentioned before, for the Zimbabwe side, even when things start to get dry, as we look at this picture, it starts to dry from the Zambian side. So as you go from right to left, that's where the water will slowly start to dissipate. But the falls are always going on the Zimbabwean side. So that is actually why we choose to be on that particular side.
Gotcha. Thank you. So, Russell, let me ask you, what is it about this trip that makes it so special? Is there something that really stands out to you about this trip that you'd like to share with us?
To me, the combination of the desert and the delta is what makes it so special. I've always had a soft spot for Botswana, even though I am South African. To me, the the exclusively wild nature of Botswana makes it so special. When you're out there, you just feel like you're never seeing other vehicles, you're never seeing other people, and the environment just feels like it hasn't changed for 10,000 years, and in many cases, it hasn't. And that to me is why I love Botswana so much. I will say that the Okavango is my favorite and probably one of my favorite locations in Africa for safari. And for me, that is the highlight. I love the Okavango. Most of these pictures that you see here, this one were taken in the Okavango. This lovely female leopard who was looking at us through the grass. Um, I find that to be the delta itself to just be such an interesting place. This ever-changing environment, these animals adapted to flood and famine with the droughts that come through there every few years and big drought cycles, and just this constant battle between the predators and the prey and who is having the upper hand, uh, often driven by the environment. To me, makes it such a special place, and it's why for me, yeah, the Okavango and Sable Alley, which is one of the where we stay on this particular trip in the Okavango, is one of my favorite spots and definitely my highlight of the trip.
Russell, we appreciate you sharing that with us. Unfortunately, that will be the last question that we do have time for today. So I'd like to hand it back to you for some closing comments.
Thanks, Rob, and thank you everyone once again for joining us. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. I hope that this was helpful in making a decision on whether you're going to join us on a family safari into Botswana, or if you're already coming, maybe it was helpful in giving you some advice on what to expect on the trip. Do reach out anytime to your trip specialist if you have any questions or anything you're not sure of, but hopefully, we see you somewhere out there in the field, and hopefully, I see you on the family safari in Botswana this year or next year. Um, but if not, I'm sure I'll see you somewhere else here on the Daily Dose of Nature. But I'll be back again soon. Keep well, everybody. See you in the field.
Russell, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. If you are interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab on a family safari to Botswana, give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.